Hi, friends. This is your pal Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about the why. I want to talk about what is Magic the Gathering. Okay, and I want to double tap the why reason. Okay, so what is Magic the Gathering today? So I do not believe that Magic the Gathering still functions primarily as a collectible card game. I think its true function today is that every single card printed with a traditional Magic the Gathering back. Now, the best way to understand it is simply an unbound page of Dungeons and Dragons canon. Okay. Now, I've talked extensively about why that is, right? And you can roll back on the the videos with this title and get the full the full sweep, right? And this is in a playlist, and you could check the playlist, right? So, but I want to double tap the why. Okay, something is happening and what I want to talk about is the purchase of Dungeons and Dragons in 1997 by Peter Atkinson from Lorraine Williams. Okay, now my take is that was completely irrational. It was not a rational business decision, right? Now it did work out within 2 years. uh and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I've read, right? The Peter Atkinson bought Dungeons and Dragons for $60 million. Okay, because Lorraine Williams had invested a lot of value into it. Right, TSR was the husk that the corn was in. D&D is the corn. TSR was the husk. TSR was always valueless. The fact that Lorraine Williams let TSR go out of business was the correct move. TSR never needed to exist. All that needed to exist was Dungeons and Dragons, and she made sure that value was injected into Dungeons and Dragons every day between 1986 and 1997, and that's why 5 decades later, we have Dungeons and Dragons stronger than it's ever been. And that's not an opinion. That's not a debatable subject, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons is literally bigger today than it's ever been, and dealing with successes that weren't even on the table in when between 1986 and 1997, right? So Lorraine Williams really catapulted Dungeons and Dragons into an incredible space. But I want to talk about the why. So why did Peter Atkinson buy Dungeons and Dragons? It wasn't for profit, right? And the reason why, and here's why I say this. In 2017, an economist by the name of Richard Thaler won the Nobel Peace Prize. You know how he did it? He came forward and he is a specialist in behavioral economics. And today we have policy. There's policy making, and there's policy making that is based on his economics. And so, what did he say, and what did he achieve? Right? He said people do not make economic decisions rationally. The vast majority of people make them irrationally, right? And get this is really good news for us. And I wanted to talk about the why of why is Magic the Gathering today Dungeons and Dragons? Why is it a Dungeons and Dragons lore vessel? Because Gary Gygax built his legacy to the point where it could not be ignored by Peter Atkinson, Richard Garfield, or James Wyatt. All right, and they essentially transformed Magic the Gathering from a collectible card game to simply a conveyor of unbound pages of Dungeons and Dragons lore, specifically rules and of Dungeons and Dragons canon, specifically lore and mechanics. Okay, and so and the reason why is they passionately love Dungeons and Dragons, and they're making and Peter Atkinson really made an irrational decision to buy Dungeons and Dragons, and I think that Dungeons and Dragons will always be bought irrationally, right? And always, it will always be bought irrationally. And the reason why is there's always going to be someone who understands what Gary Gygax did on February 7th, 1974, and how he changed human narrative to become the primary driver of human evolution in intellect, emotion, and spirit, right? And so that means that Dungeons and Dragons' actual economic value is never, ever attached to its actual value. It's always attached to this hyper elevated love of Dungeons and Dragons, right? And I really believe that Dungeons and Dragons is humanity's ethereal gold, right? And gold fever is a real thing. People just become irrationally attached to gold, right? But Dungeons and Dragons is something worth 1,000 times more than gold. And going forward, you and I need to understand this because we care about Dungeons and Dragons, right? When international conglomerates come to buy Dungeons and Dragons, they're going to have to fight people like Elon Musk, right? Just like for the right to even buy it. There will always be a line of passionate, irrational dreamers who really want Dungeons and Dragons and are willing to pay way more than market value, right, for it, right? Star Wars, Disney bought Star Wars for $4 billion. Chump change, right? Candy Crush was bought for $2 billion, right? And this is the point. I actually think the value today of Dungeons and Dragons is $500 billion. $500 billion, right? Now that's not picked out of nowhere. That's picked off the international conglomerate that was rumored to buy it last year, right? I actually think that the real value on Dungeons and Dragons is $500 billion, right? Like half the GDP for America in like a single year. It's astonishing, right? Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion, nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider like subscribing and have a fetch millennium.